one little songstress won't write me a song, I'll write my own song!
You all asked for them, so you're getting them. Don't say I haven't done you all any favors. So these are two of the most elusive Sonic characters in the entire franchise. Mighty the Armadillo and Ray the Flying Squirrel. With such a limited presence in Sonic media, I had to stick these two in one video. So welcome to the TheMentok channel, my children. This segment is known as Origin Oracle. A dive into your favorite video game characters and series to give a little twist on those origin stories. So without further ado, let's talk about Mighty and Ray. Both Mighty and Ray first appeared in a little title known as Sega Sonic the Hedgehog, an arcade game that dropped back in 1993. It starred our favorite Hedgehog alongside Mighty and Ray after they were captured by Dr. Eggman and whisked away to his prison island, where they all have to avoid killer traps and tribulations to successfully escape with their lives. Can I just take a second to point out how Sonic can't outrun Eggman's machine here before getting captured? Like, Eggman, you had him. Why doesn't you just use this thing again?
1 minute later.
Anyway, Sonic, Mighty, and Ray manage to escape captivity, and as the player powers through all the levels without dying, the trio will eventually reach the control room where Eggman awaits. Surprisingly, he doesn't even put up a fight here, he just kinda self-destructs the entire island, forcing Sonic and the others to flee the explosion while he escapes and drops into the ocean. So with that said, there's not much story to discuss with this game, but the gameplay itself is rather interesting. Sega Sonic the Hedgehog was exclusive to arcades and was mainly found in Japan, though some of these cabinets were released to Europe and the US at the time too. It's an isometric platformer with an action button that's used for the characters to jump and avoid the traps littered throughout each stage. The cabinet is fitted with trackballs that you have to spin with your hand to control the character you choose. The faster you spin the ball, the faster the character will run, but the direction you spin the ball matters as well, so you'll have to use it both to accelerate and direct your character. You can also play with 2 other players, so it's totally possible to brave Eggman's prison island as all 3 characters at once. If you look hard enough, you may be able to find one of these vintage cabinets at an arcade in your city. Shout out to Arcade Odyssey in Miami, Florida, by the way, for allowing me to finally get a chance to play this game. It was aight.
What?
My opinions on the game aside, let's talk about the conception of Mighty and Ray. Both characters were designed by Manabu Kusunoki, specifically for Sega Sonic the Hedgehog. As the lead designer of the game, he wanted to choose unusual animals that would be similar to Sonic in stature, so that they could be designed to control like him. Kusunoki would actually address this in an interview, saying, "Yes, I designed the Armadillo and Flying Squirrel characters. I did come up with backstories for them, but I can't recall them anymore."
Come on now, dawg.
I do recall why I chose those 2 animals though. In order for them to control just like Sonic did, they needed to be animals that could have the same proportions, with heads that were roughly half the size of their body. And since the game starred a hedgehog, which is a relatively obscure animal, I wanted his companions to be equally unusual. So with their backstories lost to time, I can only say that I wish our boy Kusunoki-san will stumble across his original ideas someday. If you guys are curious as to where he is now, he actually put in work on Balan Wonderworld. Yeah, that game. So hopefully he's doing well after the fact. There's also this common misconception that Mighty's design is somehow this lost concept for Sonic's original design that was scrapped in place of a hedgehog. In my Sonic concept art video, I had a few people in the comments section jump on me for not making any mention of Mighty. So for the record, let me address this. While they did consider selecting an armadillo as the official new mascot, Mighty's design wasn't actually finalized until at least 1992. So yes, they did consider an armadillo amongst 100 other things for this new mascot, and it just so happened that they would use an armadillo for a character later. So we wouldn't see Mighty the Armadillo again until around 1995 with the release of Knuckles' Chaotix for the Sega 32X, unless you count this little cameo in Gale Racer. The plot for Chaotix was pretty simple, putting Knuckles in the limelight as he tries to stop Eggman's plans on New Project High Zone. The Japanese manual actually gives Mighty a little bit of a profile, describing him as a traveler who feels that his purpose in life is journeying around the world. When in a tight spot, he can turn on a dime and show off his amazing abilities, but he doesn't like to be rough and is a calm person. Mighty was somehow wrapped up in this incident during his adventures, and is saved from captivity by Knuckles during the events of the game. He would join Knuckles and the rest of the Chaotix in defeating Eggman and Metal Sonic before the character is retired again for another 23 years.
Hey, that's some bullshit!
Knuckles Chaotix was a game with a rather troubled development cycle as well, with its prototype called Sonic Crackers, actually featuring Sonic and Tails with its gameplay mechanics that focused on rubber band physics between the two characters. They were bound together by the energy of two rings, which would eventually end up in the actual Knuckles Chaotix game. But Sonic would later be replaced by Mighty, whose appearance and behavior are identical to Sonic in the prototype. Many years would go by without any appearances or even mentions of Mighty and Ray, and in 2003, Sonic Heroes would be released to the world, where they even revived the classic Chaotix team, consisting of Espio, Vector, and Charmy, giving them fleshed out personalities and motivations. And yes, don't worry, we'll get an origin video on this trio as well. This revival of classic characters left Sonic fans asking where the heck Mighty was in the midst of all this, considering he was technically a part of the original Chaotix game. It would later be revealed that Mighty, Ray, and Metal Sonic were actually considered to be a playable team, included in the early planning stages of Sonic Heroes. Yo, honestly, I would have loved to have seen what that version of the game would have entailed, especially since Metal Sonic serves as the game's primary antagonist. I wonder if that twist would have been intact in that version of the game. So after they missed their chance in Sonic Heroes, there was even more silence, until Sonic Generations shook up the fandom with one cameo that got people talking about these characters once again. A missing poster for both Mighty and Ray were featured in the background of City Escape. This cameo got so popular that Sega's even selling this poster on their Sega merch shop. I know this because I have a copy right behind me as we speak. But this would only show that the Sonic fandom wanted Mighty back in some form or fashion. Takashi Iizuka, who is the head of Sonic Team, would even be asked about Mighty in an interview shortly after the release of Generations, with his response being, "Mighty is a part of the classic world, and the classic group of characters, and some of the Chaotix did get interpreted for the modern vision of the games. However, Mighty still exists in the classic world, so maybe we'll see him in the future in some classic iteration." And I'd like to point out for a moment how adamant Iizuka is about separating modern and classic, but I guess that's a story for another day. It wouldn't be until the release of Sonic Mania Plus that we get the triumphant return of these classic characters. And funny enough, when you run into them, they've once again been captured just like their previous appearances. Sega would take the revival of the characters a step further and include them in Sonic Mania Adventures, a set of animated shorts that were used to promote Sonic Mania Plus on YouTube. And in this mini-adventure, Ray is in search of Mighty, who is once again missing. Upon their reunion, they assist the main Sonic cast in the pursuit of Eggman, and a brief scrap with Metal Sonic. And let me just say, these animations are probably the most personality that we've gotten out of these two characters since their conception, so it's definitely worth a watch if you're interested. It will only take maybe 30 minutes of your time to watch the whole special. So this version of Mighty and Ray would also make an appearance in a special one-off 30th anniversary celebration comic in the IDW series, with Mighty and Ray going on a mini-adventure with Amy to locate the Chaos Emeralds. In response to the return of Mighty and Ray, Iizuka would go on to say, quote, "If anything, to me personally, Mighty and Ray were sealed characters that would never see light of day in a video game. However, this time around we wanted to make a title packed with all kinds of references for all the special Mania fans out there, and the stage was set to have those two make an appearance. So I figured we'd unseal them." Laughs.
We are proud to announce the first playable character, Mighty the Armadillo. Alright! No, just kidding.
Which kinda doesn't have me hopeful that they'll return again for a while. So, sorry guys, I guess it's back in the Sonic team vault for you. Iizuka seems strangely dismissive of these two, by the way, so that's kinda why I'm making this assumption in the first place. So that's pretty much all we have with this duo amidst the game continuity, but here comes my favorite part of the video, the Archie comics. You guys know I love digging into this lore and getting my mind blown every single time, right? So let's start with our boy Mighty here. He does have a pretty decent role to play in the Archie comics, as he's depicted as one of the Chaotix in the storyline. He's born into a family of thieves in the kingdom of Mercia, and it isn't long until he ends up orphaned after his parents are whisked away by law enforcement. As he struggles to figure out a way to free them from captivity, he meets a character called Mammoth Mogul, who grants Mighty super strength abilities. His efforts to save his parents still prove to be unsuccessful, which leads him to exile himself from the kingdom. Still at a young age, he ends up being captured by Dr. Iva Robotnik, along with Fiona Fox, who would eventually be Tails' girlfriend,
Fiona!
and Ray the Flying Squirrel, where they're taken to a forced labor camp. Ray's early history before his imprisonment is more or less unknown, but this is where he and Mighty would become fast friends. This same camp would later be liberated by Sonic, with Mighty and the gang being freed, but amidst the chaos, Mighty is separated from his friends, being forced to wander again on his own. In his solo adventures, he would encounter Knuckles the Echidna, and discover Angel Island in the process, where he meets the rest of the Chaotix and finds a place to call home. Ray, on the other hand, spends time trapped in another zone where time flows faster than in the normal world. So after a few hours of his time, he'd eventually be found by Mighty and Fiona when they return to the long-abandoned labor camp, with 6 whole years passing in the normal world. With Mighty and Ray reunited, he becomes an official member of the Chaotix, and together they embark on a journey to find Mighty's long-lost sister Matilda. When they're finally reunited, Matilda has no idea who Mighty is, since she's forced to join Robotnik's robot troops at a very early age. But Ray, being the BFF that he is, convinces Matilda of her brother's love, which quickly restores her humanity, even causing her to shield Mighty from an impending explosion, saving his life in the process. The resulting injuries force her to stay behind to heal, while Mighty promises he'd visit her again soon. And that's the last we see of her in the Archie comics, so...
Stop the cap!
Later in the comics, a massive event known as the Super Genesis Wave would essentially be used to retcon most of the characters to bring them closer to their game counterparts, which results in Mighty and Ray becoming an adventuring duo with a mentor known as Moss the Sloth. While they still interact with the Chaotix and the Freedom Fighters, they're more or less independent at this point of the story, and don't really have an official affiliation with the Chaotix themselves. Mighty does actually make an appearance in the other comic book series by Fleetway, Sonic the Comic. This version of him is also a member of the Chaotix who is composed of Charmy, Espio, Vector, and for some reason, Knack the Weasel. Similarly to his Archie depiction, he also possesses super strength, and has a superhero father known as Blockhead Bill. And I must say I love how so many of the Sonic characters have parents running around in most of the comic publications. So there you have it, the full origins of Mighty and Ray until Sega tells us otherwise. Where the heck has this guy been? And who the heck are these guys? And why is this guy associated with them? What the heck is a jerboa? Have you guys seen a jerboa before?
Oh my god, what is that?
I'm sure they have some kind of backstory for me to talk about, so welcome my children to the TheMentok channel. This is Origin Oracle, the segment where I take video game characters and talk about their origin stories. So let's get right to the point. Fang the jerboa, or Knack the Weasel, or whatever this guy is called. Just as a bonus, let's talk about Bark the Polar Bear and Bean the Dynamite as well, since they somewhat come as a package. He'd make his debut in a game known as Sonic the Hedgehog Triple Trouble, released in November 1994 for the Sega Game Gear, Sega's handheld console at the time. If you had one of these, I hope you had enough batteries on you to keep it running though. This game was actually a sequel to another Game Gear game known as Sonic Chaos. And in Japan, these are both known as Sonic and Tails and Sonic and Tails 2. So way before Rouge the Bat, Fang would be introduced as a thief and treasure hunter, butting heads with Sonic and Tails as they journey to find the 6 Chaos Emeralds. And yes, I said 6 Chaos Emeralds. These things rarely make sense in the Sonic canon, so I guess they live up to their name in general.
You mean the Chaos Emeralds?
But in Triple Trouble, the stage is set when Dr. Robotnik acquires the 6 Chaos Emeralds, but while he's using them to test his new weapon, he accidentally scatters 5 of them into the special stages of the game. While Sonic and Tails set out to retrieve them, Robotnik runs to Knuckles and tricks him into thinking Sonic wants the Chaos Emeralds for world domination. So I intentionally left this out of the Knuckles origin video because I plan to get this later, but why are we always manipulating this dude? Anyway, while this duo is trying to stop Sonic in his tracks, Fang the Sniper has already collected 5 of the emeralds, so he'll have to be confronted at the end of most of these special stages to get the emeralds back. Since Sonic is taking on 3 major antagonists, the game was aptly named Triple Trouble. The Japanese manual would go on to describe Fang as a treasure hunter who lives in subspace. It says he's a cunning scoundrel, but he's a cheapskate. Although he tries hard to sneak around and outsmart others, he often has a mischievous streak, where he falls short in the end. He's proud of his flying motorcycle though, I love reading how simple some of these profiles are. It's like Sega looked at the horoscope that day and put it on paper for some of these characters. Also, I'd like to point out that this manual says that Knuckles is also known as Knuckle. This makes it sound like this was his edgy Hot Topic teenage phase. So Sonic and Tails track down the Chaos Emeralds and eventually encounter Knuckle at Tidal Plant Zone. Once they beat him, they have a final showdown with Metal Sonic, and then Fang, who quickly escapes once Robotnik arrives in his final boss gear. And of course, he's defeated once again by Sonic and Tails. With all the Chaos Emeralds in their possession, Sonic and Tails make amends with Knuckle, and they fly off in the tornado. So that's more or less the plot here, with Fang driven by pure greed in this story. There's actually an awesome fan game version of Triple Trouble by Noah N. Copeland, and it's rendered in 16-bit. So it looks absolutely gorgeous. Go check that out if you can. So as usual, let's talk about Fang's conception, because this story is kinda interesting too. Fang was created by Tadashi Ihoroi and Shinichi Higashi, who were in charge of planning and design respectively for Sonic the Hedgehog Triple Trouble. During the development phase, they named the character Knack, which ultimately was changed since it was very close to the Japanese pronunciation of Knuckles. So listen, I'll give you an example. Naku, Nakaze. Yeah, y'all didn't know I spoke Japanese. So because of this possible mix-up, they ran a contest in a gaming magazine known as Shukan Famicom Tsuchin, and the name Fang the Sniper was picked as the name for Sonic's new rival. Funny enough, they were planning on naming him Jet before that idea was completely scrapped. But that name would be eventually given to Jet the Hawk, who was a part of the Babylon Rogues. But we'll get to them at some point. In Western countries, Knack would be kept as his name, since the difference between Knack and Knuckles was pretty apparent in other languages. So for us in the West, Fang was known as Knack the Weasel. Higashi would base the character as a jerboa. Wait, give me a second. So Higashi would base the character on a desert rodent in North Africa and Asia, known as a jerboa. But Sega would decide on him being a half jerboa and a half wolf in Japan. How you mix those two things I have no idea, but somehow on the flip side, he'd be a weasel in North America. This thing turned out to be 3 different animals, and nobody questioned it. So our boy Higashi here based this look on the simple design of Opa Opa from the Sega series Fantasy Zone. And fun fact, this was the very first mascot for Sega before Alex Kidd. You can actually see some similarities with the shape of Fang's head in comparison to the Opa Opa design. He was donned with a big brown Stetson hat and boots, and was initially intended to wield a revolver or some type of magnum before it was changed to a pop gun, probably just to keep things kid-friendly. So after Triple Trouble, Fang would be featured in a couple of Sonic spin-offs as well, the first one being Sonic Drift 2, a racing game for the Game Gear. And while he has no backstory to discuss in this game, he does drive his aero bike that was introduced in Triple Trouble. It's the same one his profile says he loves so much. We'd see Fang again in 1996 with the release of the arcade fighting game Sonic the Fighters. And this would be the game to introduce Bark the Polar Bear and Bean the Dynamite, 2 other elusive characters in the Sonic universe. Alright, so strap in for a second. The plot of Sonic the Fighters begins with Robotnik laying waste to the world as he dispatches robots from his new space fortress, the Death Egg 2. So to get to space, Sonic needs 8 Chaos Emeralds, yeah I said 8 this time, to power a rocket that Tails invented to reach Robotnik. The caveat is, it's a 1-seater.
Hey yo, what the fuck?
So, meanwhile, the Chaos Emeralds are being guarded by Sonic's friends across the world, with one being stolen by Fang at some point. This leads to Sonic and Knuckles bickering about who would be worthy to take Tails' 1-seater rocket to face Eggman and save the world. So instead of saving the planet, they decide to hold a tournament and wager the Chaos Emeralds and the fate of the world on the winner of the tourney. This is Tails' idea, by the way, so take that however you will. So for some reason, Bark and Bean are 2 of those chosen guardians of the Chaos Emeralds, even though they've never really appeared before. Bark the Polar Bear specifically was designed for Sonic the Fighters, to add a character to the roster that was large but a slow and powerful fighter at the same time. If you think about all the Sonic characters up to this point, no one really fit that criteria in 1996. His home course in the game was Aurora Icefield, where he protects the Yellow Emerald. Bean the Dynamite, on the other hand, is a woodpecker who would serve as the guardian of the Green Chaos Emerald, and is one of the fastest characters in the game. Bean's roots actually goes back to a 1988 arcade game known as Dynamite Ducks, where 2 ducks, Bin and Pin, would use bombs to fight the enemies that would litter the screen. So if you think Bin sounds rather close to Bean, you'd be correct, with it confirmed that Bean is actually the son of Bin, even though Bin's a duck, but I'm not even gonna try to make sense of this here. Aside from that, there's a lot of unknown things about Bark and Bean. Based on my research, I think they were solely included to give some diversity to the roster in Sonic the Fighters. So after this game, Fang, Bark, and Bean would disappear for a little bit. At some point, they were actually considered to be a playable team to appear in Sonic Heroes, much like Mighty and Ray, but that idea was also scrapped. It wouldn't be until their inclusion in the Archie comic where their personalities and affiliations would be fleshed out a little more, because of course, it's the Archie comics. But before we get there, I want to talk about their inclusion in Sonic Mania. Similar to Mighty and Ray, Fang, Bark, and Bean were featured on posters in the back of the classic City Escape level in Sonic Generations. All these characters were thought to be forgotten about and dismissed entirely from the Sonic game continuity. But in 2017, Sonic fans would actually have the opportunity to encounter these 3 forgotten characters in Sonic Mania, featured in Mirage Saloon Zone. Granted, this is simply one of Eggman's robots known as Heavy Magician, disguising herself as Fang, Bark, and Bean, so technically, we haven't seen the real version of these characters in a game since Sonic the Fighters. Nonetheless, this was an amazing cameo and these characters totally fit the setting of the level. But hopefully this appearance does open the door to their revival at some point in this continuity. So of course this video wouldn't be complete if we didn't talk about the comics. So let's start off with the Fleetway publication Sonic the Comic, where Fang is a member of the Chaotix and serves as one of the guardians of his native special zone. He's referred to as Knack the Weasel in both this publication and the Archie comics, so I'll call him that from now on to stay consistent. So while Knack is indeed one of the Chaotix here, he'll eventually lead them into a trap and backstab them in exchange for money from the Brotherhood of Metallix,
Oh, fuck. I can't believe you've done this.
an army of rogue robots from Robotnik's forces that begin their own conquest of the planet. The Metallix don't really have a use for him for very long and blast him right in the back, sending his grimy self to prison where he'd spend the next few months. He'd spend the rest of the comic plotting his next moves with the motivation of money, utilizing his shrinking technology to enact schemes that would eventually put him back in prison during his heists. Knuckles and the Chaotix kinda get their revenge by sending him back, so good work y'all. Knack would eventually go on to team up with Robotnik's lackey, Grimer, to develop a shrinking belt device that could Ant-Man people if they so wished. This was used as an attempt to somehow retrieve Robotnik from a submolecular world called Shanazar, after a crushing defeat by Knuckles. So once Knack helps retrieve Robotnik from this tiny world, he's never really seen again in the comic, but from what I've read, he's been portrayed as a straight-up jerk the whole time. Now, if you've heard of these characters before, you may know that collectively Knack, Bark, and Bean are known as Team Hooligan. This name came from their Archie comic versions, which in all honesty is probably where a majority of their character traits were fleshed out. Knack is a wolf-weasel hybrid in the comics and is a well-known mercenary who first encounters Sonic after Dr. Robotnik hires him to track down a shattered Chaos Emerald. Somehow, he actually manages to capture Sonic, but this moment of triumph is cut short when Knuckle comes through and overpowers him. This leads to him being in prison, and I'm surprised this isn't a meme with how many times Sonic and the crew send him off to jail.
Y'all are going to jail! Period!
In the Archie continuity, Knack has a twin sister named Nicolette the Weasel, who has a deep sibling rivalry with her brother. And while this video isn't necessarily about her, it's important to note that we have no idea why they dislike each other, but she's mostly associated with Fiona Fox. Yeah, that one that almost destroyed Sonic and Tails' friendship.
Fiona!
Knack will eventually break out of prison again, forming a crew with Robotnik's evil nephew Snively, which leads to this disastrous kidnapping mission of a scientist character named Nate Morgan. Knack is promptly thrown back in prison after this plot is thwarted, and surprise, he breaks out of prison again. This time with 3 new allies known as Carl, Jeff, and Connor, as they go on another disastrous mission to kidnap Princess Sally Acorn, the squirrel, who manages to get the drop on them and escape back to Sonic's side. So this leads Knack to make the smart decision to escape to live another day. Meanwhile, Bean is a mercenary with an unknown past, much like the rest of Team Hooligan. Though Bean has some ties to a group called the Battlebird Armada, and if you're a true fan of my videos, you'll remember that these are the guys that went cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs on Cocoa Island during Tails' adventure for the Game Gear. The Bird Armada in the Archie comics is actually comprised of not only the Battle Cuckoos from that game, but also the Babylon Rogues from Sonic Riders. And I did kind of make a connection to that in like the first Tails origin video. Like, funny enough, I had no idea that this was actually put together in the Archie comics, but of course it is. Anyway, Bean first appears in the comic after Dr. Eggman hires him to fight against Sonic alongside Bark the Polar Bear, but they are fought off by the Freedom Fighters. Then they'd go on to serve Mammoth Mogul for a while. Yes, this kingpin looking elephant thing, before they finally join up with Knack and officially form Team Hooligan. Their first dance together would be to retrieve a soul emerald, basically the Chaos Emeralds from another dimension protected by Blaze the Cat. And they would find themselves playing hot potato with this thing, clashing with Team Rose, Team Dark, and the Babylon Rogues, all while they try to escape with the emerald. The ensuing clash ends with a bang, literally, leaving Team Hooligan beaten and battered, forcing them to call the mission off entirely. But I guess the real treasure here was the friends they made along the way.
Man, shut your...
So at a certain point in the Archie comics, there's this super retcon event called the Super Genesis Wave, which basically alters the whole timeline a little bit. But Knack, Bean, and Bark would still be together as Team Hooligan, or the Hooligans for short, solidifying themselves as a team of mercenaries for hire, where most of the time they're hired to track down the Chaos Emeralds. Speaking of which, we'd see these three appear in the special 30th anniversary edition of the IDW comics as well, where Fang, Bark, and Bean are hired by Dr. Eggman to track down the Chaos Emeralds. This would lead to a throwdown between these three troublemakers and Sonic, Tails, and Knuckle, and the resulting scrap causes the emerald to fall off a cliff, forcing them to retreat and continue their search. When they find the Chaos Emerald once more, Amy, Mighty, and Ray aren't having any of that, which leads to yet another scrap, which ends with Fang being overpowered by Mighty. But in the chaos, no pun intended, a Metal Knuckles robot appears and takes the Chaos Emerald, leading the team to believe that Eggman was double-crossing them. When they return to their employer, they discover Sonic, Tails, and Knuckles already with him. And Eggman explains that Heavy King, one of his robots, took over his forces and was retrieving the Chaos Emeralds, which leads to everyone working together to stop Heavy King, with Sonic serving as the main force, while Fang, Bark, and Bean help to retrieve the emeralds. The comic ends with Fang and the others taking their leave, with the purple Chaos Emerald as their reward. And I just want to take a second to mention that Bark is this big softy deep down, since he gives Amy his scarf to keep her warm at some point in the story, and even blushes when Amy calls this out while returning it to him. Now I know there's a lot more that happens with these characters in the Archie comics, so if you all have any good moments or memories with Team Hooligan that you like, leave them in the comments below.
Grabbing that will give you a full hero gauge! Grabbing that will give you a full dark gauge! Ah!
I'm sure you guys knew that they were next. An iconic trio in the Sonic universe that survived the classic purge that eliminated everyone in the last two videos.
Should have gone for the head.
This is the Chaotix, a rambunctious group comprised of Espio the Chameleon, Charmy Bee, and Vector the Crocodile, who decided one day to open up a detective agency in the Sonic world. But their history and conception is rather interesting as a whole. The Chaotix as a group has a lot more characters in it depending on the medium you're consuming, but we'll get to all of that in this video. So without further ado, let's talk about the Chaotix. The Chaotix as a group first appeared in a game aptly named Chaotix, released for the Sega 32X in early 1995. It was known as Knuckles Chaotix in the US and Europe, as it gave the latest popular character in the Sonic franchise, Knuckles the Echidna, a chance to shine in his own title. The Japanese manual of this game tells a story of a mysterious island that rises from the sea after all the earth-shaking events at the end of Sonic and Knuckles. I guess with Angel Island falling into the ocean and rising back up, it triggered this island to appear suddenly somehow. So Eggman, who is the busy doctor he is, decides to explore the island for his next source of power, the 6 Chaos Rings. Apparently these things have the power to summon the Master Emerald, so it kinda sucks that we never hear about these things again. Closest we get is the World Rings and Sonic and the Secret Rings, but there's no correlation there. I know all you people new to the Sonic franchise are barely following me here on this. There's a lot of artifacts in this series, so...
Be quiet and pay attention!
Anyway, Eggman builds a base on this island called New Tragic High Zone, as Vector the Crocodile, Espio the Chameleon, Charmy Bee, and Mighty the Armadillo arrive on the island, only to end up captured and imprisoned by the Doctor. Knuckles arrives last, managing to rescue Espio in the process before they free the others and work together to end Eggman's plans. So the Chaotix in the classic Sonic universe is comprised of Knuckles, Mighty, Espio, Charmy, and Vector. I'll be updating this list for each set of Sonic media, so be prepared for that. So I talked about this game a little bit in my Mighty and Ray video, but what I didn't mention is that the game sold rather poorly, especially for a Sonic game. That was mainly because Sega was having a hard time getting their 32X hardware off the ground.
40 times more than Super NES. Hey, yo, there is no 32-bit Super NES. Are we gonna see the games or what?
In a nutshell, it was a weird-looking hardware add-on that you would throw onto your Sega Mega Drive or Genesis to give it a little bit of a processing boost, and seeing how one of these cost you $160 to get your hands on in '94, I can see a couple reasons why it failed. Adjust that price for inflation and you're looking at about $300 for an add-on without much support. So I would say the failure of this game made Sega decide to put these characters in the Sega Vault for a little while, but before we fast forward 8 years in this story, let me talk about each of their conceptions. We'll start with their leader, Vector the Crocodile.
Find the computer room!
This may not be a surprise to some, but Vector is one of the oldest Sonic characters in the franchise, alongside Sonic and Eggman themselves. Once the final Hedgehog design for Sonic was decided for the first game, Sega was planning out all types of concepts for the setting, playing around with the ideas of Sonic having a human girlfriend or being part of a rock band. Two things every teenage boy wanted to have in the 90s. While these concepts were eventually dropped, you can find concept art based on Naoto Oshima's designs of Sonic's rock band, containing a parakeet, a monkey, a rabbit, and oh my god, is that Vector?
Jesus Christ, that's
Vector the Crocodile. Yeah, so the original intention was for Vector to be a part of this band, and they were going to be featured on the sound test menu that would be in the first game. But this feature didn't see the light of day due to time constraints. Our boy Naoto was not pleased about this. The space on the cartridge would then be dedicated to the iconic Sega! So yeah, maybe it was for the best that they got scrapped. If you watch my rejected Sonic designs video, I go more in depth on all of this, but for the sake of this video, Vector would go unused until his appearance in the Chaotix game, undergoing a slight redesign in the process. Then he'd get thrown in the vault for a while. Charmy B here is the youngest of the group, but he's actually listed as being 16 years old in the American version of the game. You guys probably know they'd change this to him being 6 years old when Sonic Heroes comes out. But yeah, Sonic ages mean nothing to me anymore. And the rest of the internet apparently. Charmy was also created by Naoto Oshima, and like Amy, go watch that video, he'd make his first appearance in the Sonic the Hedgehog manga published in Shogaku Yonensei in 1992. I really need to get my hands on this entire manga. Apparently it's very elusive, so if you guys can point me in a direction to some of this stuff, let me know. After another redesign, he would join the rest of the group in Chaotix until being tossed into the vaults like the rest of them. Then there's Espio the Chameleon, who honestly I could not find too many behind the scenes info on, especially regarding his conception. We know his name is based around the word espionage, because, get it? He's a chameleon? Or even more bluntly, the Spanish word espio, which means I spy. There are a few beta builds of Knuckles Chaotix that have the title cards reading, starring Espio the Chameleon, which have led fans to speculate that maybe he could have been originally the character that would be in the spotlight before Knuckles was added. Unlike the other Chaotix, Espio would be included in Sonic the Fighters, a fighting game created for arcades in 1995. Being a part of the roster, he would serve as one of the guardians of the 8 Chaos Emeralds in the game. Then he'd get thrown in the vault. Fast forward to 2003, the release of Sonic Heroes came around. And if you watched my last couple of Origin videos, you'd know Sega opened the vault and had a hard time deciding who they were going to take out to star in this game. They eventually decided on Espio, Vector, and Charmy, bringing the three together again to serve as the Chaotix Detective Agency. These updated versions of the Chaotix would perform detective work, or more like odd jobs in my opinion, for a mysterious benefactor, who turns out to be Dr. Eggman at the end of the game. While we don't learn anything else about the origin of the Chaotix, it's apparent in this game that Sonic Team changed the canon to have the Chaotix not remember Sonic or Knuckles, who they have technically encountered in the past. So I gotta bring up head of Sonic Team Takashi Iizuka,
Fuck you.
who seems to have this hard stance on keeping classic lore and modern lore completely separate. When it comes to the reappearance of the Chaotix in Sonic Heroes, Iizuka has stated, in his mind, he didn't bring back Vector, Espio, and Charmy as characters from the past. Instead, he considered them to be new characters created from the ground up. Why include them in the first place then? Why not just design new characters for this purpose? I heavily disagree with a lot of decisions Iizuka's made in the past with this series, so I'm hoping these days he understands how passionate the Sonic fandom is. Ian Flynn, the lead comic book writer for the IDW series and the latest Sonic title, Sonic Frontiers, stated that his understanding is that the original Chaotix game was more or less non-canonical. And while I don't completely mind this, it would be nice for the Chaotix to have some kind of affiliation with Knuckles when they were brought back into the mainline series. But that's just my opinion. Regardless, after this appearance, Team Chaotix became a mainstay in the Sonic series, making multiple appearances in mainline games, spin-offs from Sonic Heroes on. Finally, a somewhat happy ending for some of these classic characters. So the lineup for the Chaotix in the modern Sonic universe is Vector, Espio, and Charmy. So as always, we have to move on to the comics. This is where the name Chaotix becomes a little bit more broad, with several other members joining and leaving the ranks of Vector, Charmy, and Espio here. We'll start with the Fleetway publication, Sonic the Comic. The Chaotix is a group formed as the Guardians of the Special Zone, a location based on the special stages mainly seen in Sonic the Hedgehog 2. The Chaotix are brought together by an entity known as the Omniviewer, some type of sentient TV screen that is a native of the Special Zone. Due to constant threats from Dr. Robotnik, he brings Vector, Charmy, Mighty, Espio, and Knack together for the best interests of the zone. The team will first meet Knuckles when he enters the Special Zone, and at first they're pitted against him when the Omniviewer believes Knuckles is a servant of Dr. Robotnik. And considering he's always being fooled, Omniviewer is kinda right for this. They eventually join together to fight back the Brotherhood of Metallix, a group of robots belonging to Dr. Robotnik that went rogue and established themselves in the Special Zone. During their pursuit, Knack reveals himself as a traitor, and he permanently leaves the party. This leads them to relocate to Sonic's world to further pursue the Brotherhood, where they team up with Sonic himself and officially become his allies. Interestingly enough, Charmy here is secretly royalty from his world within the Special Zone, the Hive. He's the son of Queen Bee and more or less a prince that decides to abandon his royal duties to become a superhero, hence joining the Chaotix. But Fleetway's Sonic the Comic Chaotix crew is comprised of Vector, Espio, Charmy, Mighty, and Knack the Weasel, until he ultimately defects. Are you guys still listening?
Wake up! Yes, sir. Wake up! Yes, sir.
Next up is the big kahuna, the Archie comic, where the Chaotix play a pretty large role in the grand scheme of things. I alluded to this in the origin video for Mighty, but Vector, Charmy, and Espio all take up residence on Angel Island, where they would meet Knuckles. They would eventually form an official group in this universe when the Freedom Fighters are more or less screwed and get captured by Dr. Robotnik's henchman, Renfield T. Rodent, in a House of Mirrors section of an amusement park, believe it or not. Don't worry, Sonic, I got stuck too as a kid once or twice. So while this is happening, Knuckles realizes he's gonna need some help to defeat Metal Sonic and joins up with Mighty, Espio, Vector, and Charmy. This team is also accompanied by two robots created by Robotnik, Heavy and Bomb.
Who?
Aw, I forgot to mention them earlier.
It's rewind time.
Okay, so Heavy and Bomb actually make appearances in the original Knuckles Chaotix game. Their full monikers are Heavy the Mechanic and Bomb the Mechanic. They aren't really too involved in the description of the plot in this game, but just like I mentioned in the Archie comics, they're described as two of Dr. Eggman's mechanic robots that tag along with the Chaotix to help them out. The downside to this is if you're stuck with them as a partner for the level, they both serve as more of an impediment than anything else. Bomb will blow up multiple times during the level, which can potentially damage the player if they aren't positioned properly, and you can't jump very high or run fast. And Heavy will completely slow you down, and it makes traversing the level extremely difficult. It's for this reason that we're still not sure if they're actually there to help, or if they're just plants by Eggman to make things more difficult for the Chaotix. So now that we're clear on that, let's head back to the Archie comic. In this comic, Heavy and Bomb actually pull their weight and provide the Chaotix team with energized stones called Power Gems that allow the team to overpower Robotnik's forces, saving the Freedom Fighters and capturing Renfield Rodent in the process, completing their mission together. So of course, with this being the Archie comics, these characters have some origins fleshed out within these stories. Before his arrival on Angel Island, Vector was born as an orphan on a continent known as Down Under. He'd grow up with other orphans with a de facto father figure that watched over them, but after some tension, he left the life behind and immigrated to Angel Island. Charmy, on the other hand, is also a prince in this continuity, hailing from the Golden Hive colony. Similarly to Sonic the Comic, Charmy isn't a fan of this lifestyle, feeling pressured by his princely status. He flees to Angel Island after lashing out at his family, ignoring the pleas of his friend Saffron on his way out the door. Remember this girl too, because I'll get back to her in a second. Charmy confides in his friend Mello to keep his location a secret, and it's on Angel Island where he'll link up with the rest of the Chaotix. Espio the Chameleon was born as a part of a shinobi clan, and actually is the son of the leader of the group. Like the others, he'd travel and settle on Angel Island, with his mission being to observe Knuckles at the behest of his mother. So this is kept a secret from the Chaotix for a very long time and actually implodes in its own character arc later on in the series. So after their first real incident together at the amusement park, the Chaotix would be involved in various conflicts with a number of antagonists, like Enerjack, who's Knuckles' evil great-uncle, and the Dark Legion, a group of echidnas that defected from the Echidna clan from Angel Island. I made a mention of this in my Knuckles origin video, but a member of the Dark Legion, Julie Sue, would defect from them and eventually become the love interest for Knuckles. What I didn't mention is that she became a member of the Chaotix in the process. And the Archie comics actually involved this team in much deeper and darker personal stories. Like, for example, Charmy's friend Mello eventually visits him, traveling from the Golden Hive colony to hang out with his friend. Both he and Charmy end up eating poisoned hot dogs after they ingest too much of a sketchy secret sauce that Renfield puts in it. And get this, Mello actually succumbs to the poison and dies, leaving Charmy in this crushed emotional state. So because of this, Charmy decides to leave the Chaotix and return to his home as a prince. But before he can even do all of that, Robotnik attacks and eventually the entire kingdom is destroyed. This is like darkest timeline Charmy right here, holy crap. He then rejoined the group after some time with his fiancée Saffron, who I guess we can consider another member of the Chaotix at this point. Eventually, the retcon event Super Genesis Wave would occur in the Sonic Archie universe, resetting the world to be more like its game counterpart. So the Chaotix roster is greatly affected by this as it slims their numbers down to 3, Vector, Espio, and Charmy. And they are part of a detective agency as established in Sonic Heroes, and essentially do odd jobs for the main cast, while still having a pretty decent involvement in the main story. While Knuckles, Mighty, and Ray still exist in this universe, they're not a part of the group any longer. And Julie Sue and Saffron B are completely wiped from the universe, leaving Knuckles and Charmy to be single men once again.
Hey yo, what the fuck?
So the official Chaotix lineup for the Archie comics is Knuckles, Mighty, Ray, Vector, Charmy, Espio, Julie Sue, who eventually gets Thanos, Saffron, also Thanos, and finally Heavy and Bomb, who are involved for one mission. There are a bunch of other plot points with the Chaotix that occur in the Archie comic that I won't get into in this video, but let me know if you all would like a deeper analysis of the Archie comics in general in a separate video. Because it would honestly take a crazy amount of time for me to dive into this since there's a lot that goes on here. Finally, I want to give a mention of Sonic X, the 2003 Sonic anime that I've been yelled at for spoiling.
So for all you viewers that haven't caught up in the last 19 years, maybe now's the time to go finish it, alright? Cool.
So the Chaotix play a pretty minor role initially in Sonic X, as the episode that debuted them aired around the time Sonic Heroes was releasing. So it was a great way to promote these characters. This version of the Chaotix is comprised of only Vector, Espio, and Charmy. And while we still know nothing of their backstories, and the main Sonic cast doesn't seem to know them at all, they're a part of a detective agency hired by Cream's mother Vanilla to go find Cream the Rabbit after they're separated. The episode is mostly comedic, with the more serious plot elements surrounding hints at Eggman's next plan to manipulate the moon. And no, I'm not inserting a Snapcube reference here. Chaotix wouldn't be seen much for the rest of the season, until Sonic and his friends return to their home world, where they're pitted against an aggressive alien race known as the Metarex. The Chaotix would join Sonic and his friends in space in their search for the Chaos Emeralds, assisting in the effort to save the galaxy. Honestly, they're mostly just comic relief characters, but I brought this up to highlight Vector hitting on Cream's mom the entire time. This flirty relationship also bleeds into the Sonic IDW comics. Find you a girl that looks at you the way that Vanilla looks at Vector. Look at this, come on now. I didn't want to end this video without mentioning one last medium where the Chaotix makes an appearance. This is actually a really old fan game from 2005 called Chaotix of Tomorrow by Magnus Anderson. I randomly remembered this fan game during a podcast I was doing last weekend, whenever, you guys should go subscribe, link in the description below.
You should track down that game and make a video on it.
I found it. It's called Chaotix of Tomorrow. Made using RPG Maker 2000. And to my surprise, the site for this RPG Maker fan game still exists. KnucklesChaotix.net. I'm gonna add this to my Chaotix video. Oh, his website's still up. Oh my god. This is so old. KnucklesChaotix.net/tomorrow. Go check out that website.
This is ancient. What the hell? This is like Web 1.0 layout.
This dude made a 2019 update to Chaotix of Tomorrow. Yes, that's right. There is a 2019 update on this. Shout out to the developer for coming back to it how many years? 14 years later to update this wonderful fan game. So my children, that is the true origin of the Chaotix, Vector, Espio, and Charmy.
Tails, you promised me.
I know, but...
I mean, I even got that Victoria's Secret dress from the catalog.
I think this is one of the most requested characters I've seen in the comments section. Or maybe it's the same person asking me over and over. If that's you, hey, congratulations, you have a video now.
Congratulations! Congratulations! Congratulations.
Either way, this is a character I definitely wanted to discuss, Honey the Cat. She'll be the last of the classic Sonic characters I'll be covering, so maybe we can call this the end of Origin Oracle Season 1? I can't tell if I want to label things like that yet, so let's talk about this elusive but recently popular Sonic character, Honey the Cat. Alright, so this video is going to be a little different, as Honey doesn't have much of an official presence in the Sonic game continuity. Honey the Cat's first appearance, kinda, was in that Sonic arcade game I've talked about in the last couple of videos, Sonic the Fighters. So just as a recap, this was a fighting game released in 1996 that utilized the Sonic roster, and it was developed for the Sega Model 2B CRX arcade hardware. Honey the Cat was originally an unimplemented character that couldn't be found in the original roster. Her in-game data was nearly complete and left within the game unseen to most players, until a port of the game was released in 2005 on the Sonic Gems collection for Nintendo GameCube and PlayStation 2. So this required avid fans to hack the game data where they discovered Honey, with her moveset mostly based around Knuckles. But through those hacks, they even managed to play as her, despite some glitches. Her model used Amy as a base, with some missing model data when certain attacks were used on her. But I'm sure the appearance of this mysterious fighter brought up a lot of interesting questions for the ones who found her. So technically, this would make Honey the very first cat character that would appear in the Sonic universe.
What?
But who exactly is Honey? What's her significance to the Sonic universe? Well, not much if we're just talking about the games. So I guess that brings us to the next question. Why was she even in the game? Honey was originally designed by Masahiro Sugiyama, the lead character designer for Sonic the Fighters. But Sugiyama-san was also in charge of another Sega fighting game released shortly before for arcades in 1995, Fighting Vipers. So this game actually served as the basis for creating Sonic the Fighters, as it ran on the exact same engine. Funny enough, Sonic and Tails are unused characters in this game, which may have served as the inspiration behind Sonic the Fighters. So, does someone on this roster look familiar?
No.
Okay, even if she doesn't, this is the one. This is the character I'm talking about right here. Honey the Cat was inspired by this particular character in Fighting Vipers, Honey, or Candy if you're playing the US version. She's a teenager who dreams of becoming a fashion designer, and uses the tournament in that game to promote her clothes. And Honey, I don't fault you for that. Get your money, bro.
It's called Raid Shadow Legends, and it's easily comparable to some of the biggest pieces.
So in an interview with Hiroshi Kataoka, the director of Sonic the Fighters, he stated that since Sonic the Fighters was originally designed around Fighting Vipers by simply placing Sonic characters in it, the character Honey the Cat was definitely modeled around Honey. You can see that Honey the Cat also has the same poses and very similar clothing. So of course, after Honey was discovered in the code of this game, her popularity kind of skyrocketed, with fan art appearing online and people asking if she would ever actually appear in a Sonic game. So fast forward to 2012, Sega would work on a port for Sonic the Fighters for release on PlayStation Network and Xbox Live Arcade for the PS3 and Xbox 360 respectively, complete with online play and the ability to play as Metal Sonic and Dr. Eggman, who were initially boss characters. But the icing on top of this re-release Ice Cream Sundae was a fully playable version of Honey the Cat. Even the method to unlock her felt like some old school throwback, where you had to highlight the cursor over Amy on the character select screen and press start to select her. I love little things like that, like unlocking a secret character in fighting games used to be like the ultimate pleasure for me. And honestly, around this time, Sega would be adding cool new features into their re-releases, like the 2013 release of Sonic the Hedgehog 2 for mobile phones, where they actually added Hidden Palace Zone back in. That was dope. And also, adding Tails to Sonic CD, super dope. So hopefully Sonic Origins lives up to this kind of treatment. So after the 2012 re-release of Sonic the Fighters, Honey the Cat would never really be featured in a Sonic game again up to this point. But who knows what the future may hold for this character. My bets are on her staying in the vaults. So with her not appearing in any more games, you'd actually think that would be the end of it, but nope. Honey made her grand appearance in the Archie comic as well. Go figure, right? I want you guys to take a second to close your eyes and think of any random scenario that involves Sonic and the gang. There's definitely an Archie comic story somewhere about it. Leave your ideas in the comments below.
You're gonna regret it. You're gonna regret it.
Anyway, Honey would initially appear on the cover of Sonic Universe issue 40, which was set up as a Fighter Select screen. It would serve as a nice little cameo, but eventually the fan demand for her appearance would grow to a level where it couldn't be ignored. Ian Flynn would be leading the Archie writing team when Honey the Cat resurfaced in 2015 in Sonic the Hedgehog issue 268. In this continuity, she's a fashion designer and the founder-CEO of Honey brand clothes and accessories, a backstory based highly around the ambitions of the original Honey from fighting Vipers. Honey the Cat would eventually become bored of just designing and begins to study martial arts in her free time. And similarly to Sonic the Fighters, there's indeed a Chaos Emerald Championship that takes place in the Archie comics, with many of the main Sonic cast participating to beat the crap out of each other for a Chaos Emerald. The tournament is organized by Breezy the Hedgehog, a character with some questionable intentions, and yeah, I'm just discovering this character exists too. Honey seems to enter the tournament just to promote her own clothing line. Sound familiar? And actually makes a deal with the other freedom fighters to hand over the Chaos Emerald if she won, on the condition that they model for her in the future. The Archie universe would actually attribute Amy Rose's iconic red dress as an outfit from Honey's clothing brand. I think that's actually a nice touch, especially since Honey's model was based off of Amy's in the original Sonic the Fighters. So Honey would face Tails in her first round of the tournament, and actually gets the best of him by tricking him into a ring out. Look at that smug look, I love this. Her next round though would be with Sonic, but at this point of the tournament, Honey was willing to throw the fight so Sonic could stop Eggman at this stage of the story. But Sonic decided to give her a fight regardless, winning rather effortlessly. When she's out of the tournament, she cheers on Sonic and Knuckles in the championship round until the tournament is ended early by a premature attack from Eggman. Once that incident is over and done with, Honey questions Breezy's intentions, wondering how Eggman had such little resistance in sabotaging the tournament. But Breezy only turns this back to Honey, saying she's no better than her, since she tricked Tails into an early defeat during the tournament. This leads Honey to leave with a heavy conscience, thinking about her previous actions. Her appearances after this arc would have her helping the Freedom Fighters as an ally against Eggman's forces as they attempt to successfully piece the world back together after Eggman shatters it, similarly to the plot from Sonic Unleashed. The Sonic Archie comic would be discontinued in 2017, and I can only speculate that Ian Flynn had more plans for Honey the Cat in future plotlines. He'd go on to lead the Sonic IDW comic, which hasn't officially introduced Honey the Cat back into the cast. But she does make a nice cameo in a special 30th anniversary comic, where Tails attempts to show off Amy's secret knack for drawing comics. We see Honey reading them alongside Mighty, Ray, and Bark, so maybe it's time for everyone to be released from the vault once and for all. Personally, I would love to see Honey make another game cameo, or at least a role in a game where she sells accessories to Sonic to customize his look. And Sega, I will take 5% of the profits of whichever game you decide to do that in. Thank you. So that is the real origin of Honey the Cat, the unused character turned fan favorite. Leave a comment below on where you'd like to see Honey make an appearance. What's up everybody, it's TheMentok here. I know I had another compilation video that I released for you guys because the last one did so well. So I might just release these, origin oracles into these larger compilations from time to time. Just have a collection for people to watch everything at once. If you got this far in the video, you've probably been listening to my voice for close to an hour now, so hit that like button. I know that you liked it if you got this far. And I hope to do more compilations of Origin Oracle in the future. Oh, and be sure to follow me on social media. All the links are in the description below. I would be eternally grateful. As always, be safe out there. Until next time, the Prophet has spoken.